Hello, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Thomas Bolland.
And I'm Felix Leroux.
And today we're going to be talking to you about the tier system, how capability-based poverty has two levels.
During this video, we will discuss how to define poverty and how to measure poverty. In order to do this, we will utilize our own tier system, which we will elaborate on later in the video. In this video, we will argue that individuals can find themselves in two distinct levels of poverty, deep and relative. These levels are defined based on a lack of certain central and fundamental capabilities. In order to explain our stance on poverty, we will utilize a tier system that distinguishes between deep and relative poverty. This leads to a modified version of the capabilities approach envisioned by Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. Our modified approach, however, acknowledges the monetary aspects of poverty by concluding that it contributes to deep poverty. It can be argued that monetary aspects of poverty should be excluded totally when working with the capabilities approach. However, we will illustrate how income deficit contributes to poverty along with capability deficit. And furthermore, we will argue that income deficit is an inherent part of poverty that cannot be ignored.
As we continue our presentation, we want to define what we think central capabilities are. Leisure, the ability for fun and play. Affiliation, the ability to be treated with dignity. Social inclusion, participation in society and society's politics. Fundamental capabilities are also included, but are distinct in their own way and thus will be defined later. As Nussbaum writes, treating people as equals may not entail equalizing the living conditions of all. We don't want to fully make everyone equal. We just want to raise the standards so people have the perception of being equal.
Now we will define what we mean by fundamental capabilities. Health, the ability to live and have access to medical education. Safety, the ability to be protected from violence, both physical and mental. Education, the ability to have an education up to a sufficient level. The reason fundamental capabilities are distinct is because they are needed for survival and therefore more immediately important. Also, we believe the failure to have these capabilities is mainly down to an income deficit.
As stated in our thesis, there are two distinct levels of poverty. We have broken these two levels into a tier system which conveys that one level of poverty is much more severe than the other. The level of poverty that we believe is most severe is deep poverty. We define deep poverty as a lack of fundamental capabilities caused primarily due to an income deficiency. Relative poverty, on the other hand, is caused by a lack of central capabilities, which encompasses fundamental capabilities. Relative poverty mainly illustrates the inequality between many individuals living in the United States. We define capabilities, which is a term coined by Sen, as the opportunities individuals have to choose and live a dignified life. The term central capabilities was coined by Martha Nussbaum to describe 10 essential capabilities that every human should have. We do not utilize the same capabilities as Martha Nussbaum, but we understand the word in the same sense. A person is not considered in poverty when they have met these certain standard of central capabilities. But if they have a lack in any of the subset of central capabilities, which are the fundamental capabilities, they are automatically defined as an individual in deep poverty. Sen states that poverty is the failure of basic capabilities to reach certain minimally acceptable levels. We agree with this statement, but we have broken up these basic capabilities in order to distinguish the two levels of poverty we have defined above. To help clearly illustrate the causes of the two levels of poverty, I will use the aid of this diagram. The overarching bubble in this diagram is a capabilities deficit, or, in other words, a lack of the central capabilities. As clearly illustrated, the individuals within the capabilities deficit are considered in relative poverty. However, the second bubble contained inside of capabilities deficit are individuals with an income deficit. What this highlights is that the people in deep poverty have both an income and capabilities deficit. Some may argue that it is possible to have an income deficit, but have no capabilities deficit. This may be true if one lived in a utopia and everything was provided for an individual, regardless on income, so that they were able to achieve their capabilities. However, we have taken a realistic approach to understanding poverty and realize that when individuals have an inadequate income, they cannot afford many materials that allow them to achieve their fundamental capabilities. This diagram helps us to realize what we mean by a tier system. The individuals in deep poverty are located at the bottom of this system as they don't meet the fundamental capabilities threshold. Like stated before, even if an individual meets the threshold for all the other central capabilities, but not the threshold for one of the fundamental capabilities, they are considered in deep poverty. After all the fundamental capability thresholds have been met, but not all the central capability thresholds have been met, the person is then considered to be in relative poverty. Finally, after all central and fundamental capability thresholds have been met, that is when we define a person as not in poverty. Some may say that this resembles a caste system. However, this is a purely analytical tool in order to gain a better understanding of how a lack of fundamental capabilities can lead to a more devastating life of poverty than individuals who lack other central capabilities. By doing this, we gain a better understanding of the group of individuals who need our immediate attention when helping those in poverty.
Now that we know how to define poverty, we can attempt to measure it. The current measurement of poverty in the US, the official poverty measurement, or OPM, is clearly outdated. The calculation of the poverty line is crude and inaccurate. For example, it is calculated based on data in the 1955 Household Food Consumption Survey that indicates families spend 1/3 of after-tax income on food. Iceland notes that more recent data suggests that figure to be 1/6 rather than 1/3. Also, near cash and in-kind benefits, such as food stamps and earned income tax credits, are not included in the OPM's definition of income. It also doesn't account for non-discretionary expenses, such as child support and medical out-of-pocket expenses. These flaws highlight that the OPM is not an accurate measure of poverty, but our goal in this video is not to fix the OPM. We are advocating for a different approach to poverty measurement entirely. As Sen states, income is not desired for its own sake. Any income-based notion of poverty must refer, directly or indirectly, to those basic ends which are promoted by income as means. Therefore, we measure deep poverty by measuring fundamental capabilities, because people use income to help achieve fundamental capabilities. However, we do acknowledge the fact that the main reason for fundamental capabilities failure is income deficit. On top of this, we want to measure the other central capabilities to arrive at our central capabilities threshold. Some may argue that our distinction between the two thresholds is unnecessary, and that we should only measure the overall central capabilities threshold. However, this would ignore the two distinct levels of poverty as highlighted by our definition of poverty. After all, it is logical that a measurement of poverty will take account of the definition thereof, otherwise we are essentially measuring something different. I will now explain how our measurement of poverty relates to the definition. Measurement of fundamental capabilities will tell us which people are in such a state of poverty that they are struggling to survive. This corresponds with deep poverty. The measurement of the other central capabilities will tell us which people are surviving but are still poor in relation to others, thus in relative poverty. This also speaks to an issue that is related to poverty, which is inequality. From a policy perspective, we measure fundamental capabilities to ensure we help those who are not surviving first. Thereafter, we use the measurement of other central capabilities to reduce inequality as far as possible. Note, we say reduce and not eliminate. The following graph is an example of what a possible measurement of poverty under our tier system would look like. Many will argue that it is not possible to measure capabilities. That would be what Nussbaum refers to as the fallacy of measurement. Income is the easiest way to measure poverty because of its quantitative nature, and therefore people think it is the best way. However, even though it would admittedly be more difficult, a qualitative measure like capabilities is plausible. In conclusion, our definition of poverty identifies two levels of poverty, deep and relative, based on fundamental capabilities and central capabilities. This tier system provides a powerful analytical tool in the sense that it gives us a basic overview of the depth of poverty. Our measurement of poverty identifies two levels of poverty, deep and relative, based on fundamental capabilities and central capabilities. This tier system allows us to know who needs help the most urgently. It may sound as if I had just repeated myself, and in some sense I did. This is because if we do not measure according to our definition, we are measuring something different from our understanding of poverty.
Thank you very much for watching our video. I hope you felt it was informative and you learned a lot today. Have a good day.